Hello, my name is Saffron Deer. Today I'm interviewing Gerry Halpin, who is one of the artists who exhibits work at Saul Hay Gallery. The first question I wanted to ask you was about your recent work, because I've noticed there's been a dramatic shift from your aerial paintings to what you're currently doing. I was wondering, do you think your work has changed a lot over the last year, or do you see your old work and your new work as quite similar to each other?
Well, Saffron, it's changed a little bit in the sense that I've not been able to do what we've been able to do before because of the pandemic. I've not been able to look at the world from above. And I do like to draw what I can see first, even though I might interpret it later in a different way. I like to draw. So that means that I've had to look around at different things that would interest and stimulate me. And that's been my own area. I've kind of gone back to basics, my origins, as it were. So I've explored the moorland, trees, rivers, streams, and especially this last winter, the snow. The snow's really been quite interesting because it has a lovely way of emphasizing things, and then in other ways, it softens things. And in some respects, it's a bit like the coastal thing, really. It's a bit like the sea being soft and light and the coast being quite rugged and dramatic. So there's been a sort of similarity in how I've approached it, really. Yeah.
Next thing I wanted to ask you was I've noticed that a lot of your work focuses on things like rivers and coastlines. And I was wondering, what is it about this type of landscape that appeals to you over, say, hills or green forests or something?
Yeah. I've always been interested in looking at the sea. I wanted to be a sailor one time, but never quite made that. But the sea's always been there, and it really is one of those areas, especially the coastal area, where you've got it's dramatic. There's the sort of ebb and flow of tides, there's the big wash of sea, there's the ruggedness of the coast. There's a stability about the coast as well, so I can sort of play around with things and in an abstract way, the way in which I paint, which is quite textural, quite thick and juicy paint. That's a lovely sort of area, and I look for that when we're flying about, going from one area to another. But it's a kind of tension. It's the tension really between the sea and the land, and that's the bit that I like, and that gives me the inspiration. But also the coast, I've really sort of been looking at the coast rather than the big drama thing. I've got a little bit closer in, and I've been looking more at the seashore as well. And it's a miniature really of the sea and the drama. It's softer, but it's a miniature version. And I've begun to find lovely things like shells and pebbles and debris that's left behind by fishermen, and colours, really, the red and the greens that you find out there. So I've enjoyed finding the seashore as much as the drama of the big sea and the big rugged coast. So that's been quite interesting. Yes.
Next thing I wanted to ask you was, do you feel like continuing your work during lockdown has helped you stay positive and deal with some of the anxieties of the virus a little bit better than if you hadn't been able to do that, do you think?
I think we're very lucky to be able to paint because it's something that we can do almost every day, one way or another. And because I can do some artwork every day, it has been a stabilizing factor. I do feel sorry for people who've not got that opportunity to do something that pleases them, that they've had the sort of various pressures. But in a way, it's lovely focus. As I've said earlier, I've been able to look at a different sort of landscape, but it's the focus really that's softened the effect of the pandemic. So the shift and the focus, that's been lovely, and it's allowed me to not have any worries at all because I've just been able to carry on, which is grand.
Okay, the last question I wanted to ask you was, are there any changes you made either to your life or to your practice because of COVID-19 that you think actually you might keep on doing even once the pandemic is over?
Yes, indeed. And the big change for me has been the change of medium. I've got back to some watercolor, which is where I started really. I was a watercolor landscape painter and then moved on to it because they're very, very juicy and very lovely. And then, of course, oils, which are much more manipulative than acrylic paints. But because of the sort of change of emphasis, the moorlands, the bare trees, the snow, the watercolor has been really quite a lovely medium to express that. And particularly being able to use the watercolour in a wet in wet, which is quite challenging, quite exciting, but you do gain a lot. And it's been quite lovely to get back to the watercolour approach. But also, I've included inks, which I've had in a box for years, never bothered with, and luckily they don't go off. So I've opened the tops of inks and dropped some ink in. And the other thing I rediscovered as well, Saffron, were pastels. I've got a box of beautiful pastels that have sort of got the ends rubbed off, but they've got far more of the end rubbed off now because I've been using them as well. So yes, it's certainly changed the way in which I've used the medium. But at the same time, I think I will carry on, and I'd like to adapt the technique using acrylic paint, for example, in a much thinner way than perhaps I've used before, as a form of underpainting, and then to paint on top of that. So this year of change has been very inspirational because I'm passionate about painting and I didn't
Yeah.
want to stop. Yes. So I'll carry on using those mediums and carry on producing work which is to do with the landscape around me. And possibly when we get back to the aerial views, I mean, at the moment I'm using old drawings and old photographs that I've taken through plain windows to work from. I miss the sea. But yeah, it's been really quite lovely. Yes, quite lovely.
Okay then. Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for agreeing to this interview and answering my question.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for asking, Saffron.